Hello and welcome to a new episode of The Wrap. Today we are super excited because we have Aaron Smith with us. He has experience from 3 different unicorns and he will share his experience with how to scale fast and how to build a TA function. So super excited to have you on board here with us, Aaron.
Thank you. Yeah, really excited to jump on.
I went to your LinkedIn profile and just started reading. Looking at your current position, says that your lead TA team to double the company size to 1,200 employees, focusing on doing everything 100% direct.
Yeah.
So 2022, 700 hires, 2023, 300 hires, and 2024, 400 hires planned.
Yeah.
I'm like, whoa, we need to talk about this.
Yes, we'll jump into it because a lot of people, when I say that, even when I'm pitching to candidates and I'm on a call and, kind of talking through our journey, everyone is like, whoa, particularly in this today's circumstances when there's a lot of redundancies, a lot of people are slowing down. And as you said there, this year we plan to make about 400 hires. So it's substantial growth, but
yeah, definitely. So I'm a bit curious what's happening under the hood. How do you sort of set up that type of organization and how do you work? How do you ensure speed and quality? And
yeah. So when I first joined the business, it was quite over reliant on agencies, I suppose. We had all sorts going on. We had, an internal TA team, we had agency usage and also RPO. So it was pretty much everything at once. And I suppose it was a little bit as a newbie, coming in and trying to manage everything. It was quite overwhelming. And everything was a priority hire, like everything in the business. And there was a real amazing energy in the business and a lot of investment from the business on TA. It's kind of like a double-edged sword, like you just want to kind of slow things down and figure out, okay, what are we using agencies for? What could we do internally? What do we need the RPO for? And it was just kind of all systems go, go, go. We'll get to that, I suppose, but that's definitely one of the learnings. And so what we decided to do was build a TA team, an internal TA team on site, reduce agency spendage, reduce the kind of the RPO usage as well. And over time, we've built that out. And that's a team of about 17 right now, speaking, predominantly based in Barcelona, but we have folks based in Berlin, Edinburgh, London, and also the US. And so we really tried to get that, and drive that partnership model with internal TA teams and continue that this year, so we've just finished a batch of hiring and what we've decided to do is hire a few folks on FTCs as well, because I think what you were saying there with the agency model, there is a lot more embedded, it's such a uncertain time when it comes to TA and, sometimes things change at a drop of a hat. I think we've learned that with sort of COVID and kind of the macroeconomic situation. So we've kind of changed it up recently, but what we're trying to do is build TA teams, internally for TravelPerk and really drive that partnership model.
If you're a team around 17 people, around 400 hires, I would mean around 20 plus hires per recruiter. It's obviously a bit more complex than that, usually like the challenge or how challenging a specific role is, but could you elaborate a bit more about how you're organized? Are people focused on specific functions, subjects? How much are the hiring managers doing themselves versus you being facilitators or sourcers?
Yeah. So we're kind of a 360 team, we're 360 and we're kind of split in between what we call builders and business. So builders is tech, business is what, sales, customer care, people team, etc. So we've got 2 big teams there. The big energy and focus for this year and was in previous years is sales and engineering. And so the 2 teams are very much based around that. So, everyone pretty much is working on a role within those 2 departments and then taking on other stuff within that. So we've got, engineering recruiter and they're also doing data. And then, engineering recruiter and also doing security. And what we're trying to do is split that up between function. We did have it location based, but what we tried to do a little bit more now is actually on the role based. So if we're hiring a bunch of engineering managers, we'd give it to one recruiter. If we're hiring a lot of seniors, another recruiter. So we're kind of splitting it out like that. in the builders side of things. On the business side of things, it's much more about the geographies. And so we have country managers that are looking after, Spain, UK, DACH, and those recruiters are really working with those country managers and their leadership teams to hire, but also attract. They're doing a ton of stuff at the minute, events, grad programs, kind of conferences, and really going out there and using their sales technique, so to speak, to also hook in candidates. So it's very much a partnership, and we drive those partnership models, and it's not all going through myself as the manager or my counterpart in the business team. We really try and push the teams to, really sit down and join the stand-ups, join the all hands, retro sessions, whatever it might be, of both the engineering teams and the sales teams.
Yeah, just the volume is so massive. So getting those priorities, both when it comes to roles, but also with regards to recruitment operations or infrastructure, what to focus on, when to focus on like the right stuff. So how do you build your backlog and hiring roadmap? How do you sort of balance that?
It's a very, very good question. It's something that I've learned the hard way, I suppose. That's one of the learnings of working in unicorns. And I think we didn't really have a prioritization system. As I said, it was just a lot of investment into TA and recruitment. We come off the back of COVID, so obviously there was zero hiring and there was just pure excitement. What we didn't really have, it was just, here's a big long list and here's all the budget you need and go ahead and hire. What we've done this time around, and this year particularly, is build a very in-depth hiring plan alongside the finance team, people partners, and all of the relevant stakeholders, so the engineering leadership team, the revenue leadership team, etc. And what we do each quarter is prioritize those roles, so those kind of business critical roles. And what we're trying to do is work around that more. So what we can say to the teams is, right, instead of hiring 30 people, try and focus on the top 7 priorities, and alongside that also hire another 23 or whatever it might be. So we're trying to really very much work in a priority system and a ranking system. That also goes towards like how we coordinate, how we schedule interviews, how we kind of stack rank the roles, sourcing sessions, sprint style kind of weeks, etc., to make sure that those critical hires are being taken care of. So it was something that we didn't do massively. We would just have a number to hit, really, and we would hit it. And so it wasn't very much kind of location based or level based or role specific. It was just like, hire me 15 engineers. And it was good and it worked, don't get me wrong. But where we are today as a business, having that kind of dedicated plan really helps us out in terms of, reporting, as I said, sourcing strategy, how we hire TA folks. We decided that we needed to hire a German-speaking talent partner because we needed to really build out the DACH market. So having that kind of more strategic lens is an absolute game changer. It really is.
You mentioned sprints. So how do you facilitate that? And how do you work? What's the methodology there?
I'm going to be trialing it out in the next kind of couple of quarters. We've worked more in kind of quarter long sprints, right? And what we want to do, or kind of more monthly sprints. And what I want to do, and we've been trialing out for this quarter, is working kind of 2-week sprints, and mirror what the business teams actually do here. And so it's really figuring out on what isn't working, what is working, and leverage the skills and the skill sets in the team to really help out on that. So someone might just be really struggling on a particular pipeline, and potentially not doing like the most creative sourcing in the world, but someone on another pipeline is very, very good at that. So what I would probably do is put those two folks together and say, right, let's just smash LinkedIn for a week. Like you can do what you're doing. This other person can come in with their different style and kind of, contribute together on that. And so we really want to work it like a product, squad would do it. So a bit of a kickoff first of the week. Everyone knows their priorities, what they're going to be working on, go away and work on that particular role or roles for a 1 week period, and then do a retro at the end of the week to see what went well, what didn't go well, and then kind of reiterate for the following week if that's the same pipeline or if we go on to something else. So that's something that we're going to try and be doing again, because we know the priority roles for Q2 over the kind of the next few weeks, actually.
Sounds exciting, and think like getting two different philosophies together, or like approaches to work, and bundling it and seeing if you can extract some synergies or value and shared learnings, and also like focus. I believe, like especially for sourcing, having that momentum and just sort of locking yourself in and just putting on the headset and going a bit sort of crazy on LinkedIn. I think that's
it's so much easier to do when you've got a bit of cross collaboration there, where you're sharing the workload, sharing the skill set. And it's also, I think it's just better for humans, like we all like, particularly in TA, like working towards a target or a number. But if you've just got a big number of like 15 engineers there, it doesn't get you motivated, it's just a number. But if you sort of break it down and say, right, this week we want to send out this amount of in-mails, get this amount of engineering managers in the top of the pipeline, and just bring it down to sort of micro targets, it just helps out so much, just kind of pushes and motivates the team. But myself speaking, that's how I really motivate myself.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. And like looking at, for example, those 15 engineering hires or engineering manager hires, I think that's very much a lagging metric in a way. So the leading one would be the activities, like how many have you contacted, what's the conversion rates, how many candidates do we have in the pipeline now. Yeah. So how much are you using these metric as measurements for TA people versus just pure analytics and then reviewing it after a sprint? Again,
probably another lesson learned for me, but it was to really bring in a tool that could help you out with that sooner rather than later, and particularly at TravelPerk, we were doing it all manually via Greenhouse and sort of manual reporting. And we decided to bring in a tool to sit on top of that. And that tool is called Talent that we decided to go with. And that really allows you, it's kind of like a dashboard on top of Greenhouse, but really allows you to build kind of specific metrics and dashboards for each role, And through that, we only kind of switched it on sort of end of January, I suppose. And that gives you all of that granular detail that you need, which has been, again, an absolute game changer. So we've kind of brought it internally for the TA team to figure out, okay, building out their own metrics, as you said, their own kind of ratios, and trying to figure out, okay, if I need 4 engineering manager hires, let's work backwards. What are the conversion rates? Which locations are going to be harder than others? Next phase is to really put that in the hands of hiring managers. So we're kind of giving that to folks on a monthly basis and a quarterly basis, but we actually want our hiring managers to be like self-serving on that, so they can be just proactive on it and on top of those numbers. So I think it's critical, 100%. I've massively enjoyed using a tool like that, having it there and kind of self-serve, and just being able to really deep dive into the data. You can go so deep, whereas I'm personally not like the strongest on, manual downloads and cleaning the data and sheets and stuff like that. So to have a tool in the tip of my hands is a game changer for me.
Yeah. Wow, that sounds really, really good. What was the name of the tool again? So that the
Talent it's called. Yeah, Talent. Okay. Yeah.
Okay, so, brilliant.
Yeah.
Is it ATS agnostic? Could you apply it to others?
I believe tools? It is for the major ones. Yeah, it was originally just Greenhouse, and we're a Greenhouse shop here, but it was initially just Greenhouse. But I believe that they can go with all of the major ones like Ashby and Smart Recruiters, etc. But yeah, it's an awesome tool. There are a couple more out there. We did demos with them, but for what we needed, and to really trial this out for the first time, we found that Talent was the best catered for our needs.
And in terms of motivating the TA team, then metrics is obviously something. Some people love it, some hate it.
Yeah.
What are those sort of triggers that you use, or how do you sort of spark that enthusiasm within the TA team to keep them motivated and sharp?
So it was something that we're working on right now as we speak, that it is and has been for a long time very numbers based. very numbers based. We get our numbers, we're breaking it down into biz critical, etc. We're trying to work backwards now, and as I said, kind of build those micro goals and micro rewards and kind of milestones almost. What we're trying to do now actually is kind of link it to the business objectives and business strategy. I think the best performing teams really, really get motivated when they know exactly how their work is impacting the wider business and kind of the business objectives. So for this year, TravelPerk as a whole did an awesome job of, kind of releasing those goals for the year and what we need to focus on. And so we've been, as a TA leadership team, we've been fortunate that we can break that down into quite simple goals. And so what we're now doing is linking that and what we're doing to, the business objectives, basically. We're trying to take that one step further in terms of the individual roles and how they are contributing to a particular new squad or, project. And there are some key initiatives that we're going to be working on in kind of Q2 and Q3. And so what we're doing right now, as I said, is kind of trying to mirror that, so that the way that we report, the way that we give updates on certain roles is linked back to key product initiatives, which then goes back to revenue initiatives. And kind of same thing for our sales teams. It's we have to build X amount of people and X amount of teams to contribute successfully to the revenue of the organization. So we're doing that, and also trying to this year is very, very TA focus, so to speak. It's a very hiring heavy year for us, but we know that, and myself speaking from experience, TA teams are also very passionate about the project based side of things, whether that's event strategy, employer brand, kind of TA operations. Everyone has their passions and the kind of the skill sets to mirror that as well. So we try and make as much as we can the capacity for the folks on the team to work on kind of key strategic projects within TA that's going to successfully kind of contribute to the TA hires as well. So that's how we're kind of pushing the motivations of the team.
I think what's interesting is also looking at your hiring numbers, right? It's been consistently high. It's a bit lower now than it was 2022, which is obviously natural. How do you see that sort of candidate market being different 2024 versus 22?
Yeah, it's very interesting. 2022, we was up against a lot of other companies. It felt like the whole world was recruiting, and salaries were outrageous. People were breaking bans. It was very much like a war for talent. This year, it's still competitive, but I wouldn't say it's as crazy as 2022. I think companies are being way more strategic, taking their time way more, happy to reject people more than they probably were to make sure that it's the right hire. So we're in a very fortunate position, when we're reaching out to candidates and sourcing and, talking about projects. That's why we're trying to double down on our employer brand, because we're one of the few companies out there that is hiring, but heavily hiring and heavily investing into it. So we're very fortunate that, when we reach out to candidates, they're very engaged. Our in-mail acceptance rates are the best I'd probably ever see. In my sort of 10 years recruiting, it's a combination of things of redundancies and a downturn in the market, but us raising money, having very good kind of PR campaigns and employer brand campaigns, that it's all just kind of coming together, and I think people are looking for companies with a bit of stability. So, once we're seeing that, we're hiring, we've just raised loads of money, we really want to kind of double down on the markets that we operate in, people really are quite excited about that, and, I know the name of the podcast today is, about unicorns, but when you say that to people, it's very much pure excitement as well. We're about 1,000, just shy of 1,200 today, and are a unicorn. So I think people are really excited about making impact. Joining a unicorn, making impact, and having a bit of stability around them. I think that combination of things for us is really, really working right now.
And I think you've been part in these unicorns, but you also been part in like the Series A phase where you work closely with the founder. So how do you see the TA function, the strategy and tactics evolve from, I would say maybe a Series A, or depend on valuation, all the way to the unicorn status? How do you see that the journey that TA takes?
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. Could talk hours on it. But, from like Series A, what I saw was that sometimes you hire quite all rounders, perhaps, kind of
Mm,
general profiles, people that can do a bit of everything,
mm,
They're kind of those superstar hires where, they can do kind of three jobs into one, because that's kind of what you need there. So again, the kind of the skill sets and the roles that you're looking for are quite niche, and it's a different type of person that kind of joins a Series A versus a Series D. Like it's a combination of things. They might have had that experience before. They might not have. They might only ever want to work at startups and not kind of scale up. So it's really a combination of things. So I'd say that. At Series D, etc., you're looking for more kind of specialists, specialists in their domain, people that would kind of do a particular skill set or partner with a particular business area, where, as I said, at Series A, you're kind of juggling all sorts of plates. From a TA perspective, I think you kind of mirror that, and it's the same thing. You've got a kind of maybe a smaller, leaner team, and you're kind of working on a bit of everything and slightly scrappier, because you don't have a huge amount of budget, perhaps, or, what you're working on is super business critical because you've just got investment on this particular product initiatives and you need to get a squad up and running within 1 quarter, so very different. What I'd say is as well that you're on that kind of journey between Series A and Series D of kind of building that consistency in the TA side of things as well. So, at a startup, you're trying to move as quickly as you can, because you're competing against a lot of the big players in the market. You necessarily can't, win on salary, but you can on equity. So what you're selling is different, and it's normally kind of speed kills in that sense. Startups have that advantage where they can get someone through, give them a really personalized experience, and give them an offer at the end of it. Whereas at kind of Series D, you're really trying to build for consistency. You're kind of making sure that experience that an engineer has mirrors that of a salesperson. If they're a senior in engineering, they should also be a senior in sales. The traits and the qualities are the same. So it's very, very different, kind of what you're trying to build for and the process. But I'd say those kind of two big things are the differences I personally saw, in the kind of two environments.
I think what I'm also a bit curious about is the TA profiles that you hire. So what type of profiles are you hiring now versus what you were hiring at the Series A stage? You mentioned that people might be more generalists, like open to doing various sorts, but are you hiring like ex-developers? Are you hiring HR people? What type of profiles are you looking for when you're hiring TA professionals?
Yeah, interestingly, I think personally speaking, I think it's always been the same type of profile that I look for. It's probably just the company that they want to join is different. As I said, it's that kind of personal motivation of joining a Series D with an international team versus a Series A in one office, all in London. And it depends on a multitude of different factors, but I think as I look for the same qualities. I do like hiring folks that have a little bit of a specialism in them, so whether that's engineering or sales, and they can join the team and be able to teach me and the rest of the team a thing or two. So we always kind of look for that to hopefully to play to their strengths and their specialisms, but the adaptability, and I think that's the key thing that I've always looked for, a trait of folks, if they are an engineering specialist, but they get asked to work on sales for the rest of the year, that's fine for them. And they'd almost embrace it because they want to go over to the sales world, learn that world, become a better TA professional, and then take any learnings and mistakes and whatever and bring it back to the engineering space, one day in the future. So I think they're the kind of the key qualities that I've looked at. And all of the environments that I've personally worked in have always been in a 360 model. So, being able to do everything, in terms of being scrappy and building a bit of an employer brand, sourcing, managing candidates, closing them, and kind of finishing the loop. And on top of that, doing all of the stakeholder stuff is the types of skill sets that we've always hired here. So I always kind of look for that element as well, that they're happy to get their hands dirty and roll up the sleeves and market map and message folks. That might change in the future, but yeah, I'd say those kind of main qualities depend, irrelevant of the kind of the company size, are the kind of the core qualities that I always look for in a TA professional.
We haven't talked that much about this, but when you run your processes, how much is TA involved in the assessment part of the process? Do the hiring manager handle that themselves, or do you have recruitment consultants doing end to end, or from acquisition all the way to assessment and signing, or what's the structure there?
So it's a strong partnership, yeah. So we're kind of very much responsible for finding the candidates, and kind of if that's on LinkedIn or the kind of the resume screening. We try to involve as much as we can the hiring managers to get involved with that. It's always a capacity issue and a kind of a training element to that. But reviewing the CVs with us, going out, sourcing themselves, joining our sourcing sessions, to tell us what does a good profile or candidate look like. We try and push that as much as we can. That being said, TA is very much responsible for that side of things, and we would do the first kind of initial screen. So we really work with our leaders and figure out what are the kind of core competencies and qualities. So we really get under the hood of the areas that the teams are partnering with, and that's why we push that partnership model. So they really truly understand what are the key qualities, skills, and criteria. So we do it on kind of two sections, kind of skills for the job and also kind of the TK TravelPerk values as well. So we're kind of really assessing that to make sure, okay, awesome, they've got all the skills and match up really, really well, but are they going to be a good fit for TravelPerk and its mission and our core company values? So we would look after that. We look after the kind of candidate journey as well. So we're there every step of the way, giving prep, guidance, feedback. But it's very much the decision of the hiring managers, and we involve them in multiple stages. So it's normally the same across the business areas. We kind of have always the first call after the TA call is a hiring manager deep dive, not necessarily with the hiring manager, but someone who is well placed to make a decision on the candidate. They do about 60 to 90 minutes kind of deep dive into their skills, motivations, etc. We normally do some sort of assessment after that. So maybe a presentation, a take-home task, coding assessment, something like that. And then towards the end, we do a kind of a whiteboarding challenge, a system design. So it's all very interactive. It's all very much kind of a skills and competency-based interview training program. Most of the time, we make a decision after that. So we do a thing, what's called a wash-up. So we jump on a call together between 15 minutes and 30 minutes of everyone that has spoke to the candidate. And we make a decision on if we're going to hire that candidate or not. And if so, at which level, so we've got a job architecture and leveling framework, and we would figure out, okay, this person is that particular level. And that helps TA inform which salary banding we're going to use and give feedback to the candidates as well. So that happens. Most of the time we would create an offer off the back of that. Sometimes we follow it up with a C-level chat. So CTO, chief revenue officer, whoever it might be, might jump on and, do the kind of the final call with a candidate. So it's pretty consistent. And TA is involved from the start to the finish.
And do you use, I know Greenhouse offers scorecards and these type of metrics. Are you scoring the candidates throughout the process? And when you do that sort of wash-up discussion, are those sort of quantitative scores used, or is it more opinionated, or subjective reflections?
Yeah. So this time last year, we had about 5 months of reduced hiring, so it was critical hiring only, and obviously we had a fairly big TA team. So what we did was do some Erasmus projects. So some of the TA team went and worked with people operations, people partnering, etc. And then some of the TA team sat with us. And that was a project, what we called hiring enablement. So it was one of those rare moments, what I was talking about earlier, which I would love to have had that when I first joined TravelPerk, was just to, jump into the data, look into scorecards, figure out what we're actually doing and kind of build a strategy behind it. And we was able to do that, luckily enough. And what we decided to do was look back on all of the mass hiring that we did previously, as you said, kind of 700 hires, and look at kind of the key themes that we missed on, how we can improve next time. And a big piece of that was standardizing the process across all of the major hiring areas. We added scorecards. So we created, dedicated scorecards for each page. We added better interview prep, both externally for candidates and internally for interviewers. We created competency-based interview training sessions that we rolled out. So we was just getting ready for what we knew was going to happen, which is today, which is kind of mass hiring again. So we really made sure that all the documentation, the systems worked for us, and everyone was kind of using the same process and methodology. And that's what I kept iterating. It's kind of a skills-based interview process, and no one's coming into that wash up or filling out their scorecard saying, I've got a gut feel about this candidate, or anything like that. It's, what you're asking, the skills and the competencies that need to be shown by the candidate. So when we're making a decision on a candidate, we know that even if it's to progress or reject, it's the right decision for TravelPerk.
Yeah. That makes makes a lot of sense. If you think about like the volume that you're hiring, and getting that right is obviously key. And I think like these wash-up sessions without data to back it up usually can become very subjective, and strong opinions from, I don't know, technical leadership could there's a bias trap in that. But fantastic to hear that you're using data, and that both for quality point of view, but also like diversity as well, right? So seems like you're doing a lot of the right stuff. So that's cool to hear.
No, it's great, and that's something that, again, it sounds really basic, but when you're running 100 miles an hour with a lot of hires behind you, and you're behind the pace or whatever, you just don't get the time to do this stuff, But when you do actually get the time to do it, it's a game changer, and that's something that I would definitely personally vouch for to do again at TravelPerk if we need to do that again in 1-2 years' time, or another company that might end up in the future, is to, really promote to the leadership team or the people leadership team to down tools for a month, whatever it is, fix it, get it all in process, get yourselves ready, and then go out and do a big hiring sprint, because it is so important.
Yeah. That's also something we're trying to advocate as well. Coming into an embedded collaboration, we know that there are a lot of these recruitment enablement stuff that we need to get done to be able to do better hiring. But as an agency, you're usually measured on cost per hire or like number of hires. So for us to at least try to find place to do that in conjunction with just operational recruitment is key. So yeah. I'm glad to hear that you have good experience with that. So my next question was around how do you sort of ensure a consistent high hiring bar at scale? You've mentioned something now about like standardization and using data. Any other things that you see to ensure that hiring bar remains high?
Yeah, no, we do. We look at the quality of hire metric, which is, kind of the holy grail, so to speak. There's different ways of slicing the data, and everyone kind of looks at it differently. But that was something we started to look into more. And the reason why we did a lot of this process stuff was that we started tracking that from 2022, and, tracking quality of hire and see what was the successes and the pitfalls and what we need to double down on, to ensure that bar's there. So, if someone was rated a high performer, what was the qualities and skills that was shown through the interview process that we should really focus on in the kind of the next batch? So that was something really interesting. Something also that is fairly common, and something that I had the first experience of using at Skyscanner, was the bar raiser process, which you might have heard of before. It's adapted from Amazon, so Amazon was kind of the creators of the bar raiser program, and many companies such as ourselves have kind of adapted it to their needs. And so we're in the process of creating that bar raiser program. It's kind of discipline specific at the minute, but the ultimate goal is to build the bar raiser program across the company. And so a bar raiser is essentially someone during the interview process that would meet the candidate and really focus more on the kind of the soft skills. So I would say kind of motivation, communication, growth potential, stuff like that. And they would help the TA team actually lead the wash up. So they would be the ones kind of responsible, I suppose, of making the decision. So they kind of look at everyone's scorecards, they create a theme for the wash up, and they're kind of like an impartial, judge, I suppose, at the end of that process. So they're kind of really looking at the main themes, and they're making sure that consistent sort of bar, so to speak, is met. And if someone is being too lenient or too harsh, they're there to kind of call them out slightly. Equally, if the interviewers aren't, submitting scorecards in times, they're not detailed enough, they're not giving the TA team and the bar raiser enough evidence to make a decision, they are the ones that would challenge the interviewers to bring up the standard. So it's kind of a bit of everything they are. And it's kind of like a privilege almost to be asked to be a bar raiser. It's because you are someone that's seen as a big cultural ambassador, really lives and breathes the values, and you find interviewing a very important part of your job. So we're kind of, as I said, going through that at the moment. We're kind of really kind of full steam ahead on the builders side of things and using that. And as I said, what we want to do is that an engineering director could jump on a sales interview and do the same process, so it isn't role specific or department specific. And that's how you would make sure that bar is being reached, not just in the tech team and the builders team, but across the company, So that's something that we're iterating on. It's a very long process, actually very tough to get out, because it's very incremental. But that's something particularly at Skyscanner that I saw work amazingly well.
Looking at your track record and what you've done, Aaron, could you just give us an example of a project you're super proud of that you sort of, a really challenging project? It could be a recruitment project, it could be a general ramp up, something to share with the audience, and
Yeah. I'd probably say at TravelPerk, there's kind of two there. I think the hiring enablement piece that I spoke to, it's not something that probably comes natural to me. I'm not, a TA operations person. I'm more kind of on the recruiter, employer brand side of things. So to push myself to actually do that and now realize the importance of that, I've got a much bigger appreciation of TA ops and people ops and that kind of world. And, would definitely push people to do that more and more. So that was something that was great and really enjoyed that. Also really personally proud of the team that we've built at TK, at TravelPerk, kind of joining, as I said, right after we've raised a little of money and it was kind of an explosion of roles. To still hire 700 people is no mean feat, that is a lot of people. We doubled the size of the business. And that's something that I always look back on and be super proud, kind of building the team as we did that, kind of reducing the agency spendage, which is always something that from an internal TA perspective, you're always looking at and trying to bring down as much as possible and use agencies where necessary and where it makes sense. So to do something like that, I think is great. And when we say that to people, it comes across pretty impressive. So that was something, and that's how I really built sort of trust with the leadership team and trust with peers across the business, because it was that, okay, you can deliver on kind of what you say, and also bring down kind of, the spendage of things as well. So that's something I always look back on with fond memories. It was crazy. It was intense, it was madness at times, but we got through it. And, as I said, off the back of that, we built better processes, brought in fantastic people for TravelPerk. And as I said, built an amazing internal TA team that we've still got today. So yeah, that's been great.
What are the most typical challenges that you face when you're undergoing hypergrowth? That's a recurring problem that you see in TA organizations?
Speed for sure,
Mm.
and we found a massive blocker in coordination. And our coordinators are fantastic, but there's only so much that they can do, and I suppose there is an element of AI in there, but we chose to use a coordination platform. We went with Prelude to help out on that, that would kind of do some of that calendar Tetris for you, have a centralization of coordination. And that's been a game changer for us, to bring that in. And it's just reduced the amount of manual hours that the coordinators do, And again, they can spend a little bit more of their time on the talent operations piece and creating data dashboards and doing more than coordination, which has been fantastic. So I'd say that. You're also trying to hire as many people as you can, and I think there's a real emphasis on actually saying no to candidates. That's something that we probably learned the hard way, where I was always happy that we'd look at the numbers and they were very full and very, very healthy, but they might all be the wrong candidates. We are now much more focused on the quality of the candidates. And what I was saying earlier about really driving that partnership with the hiring managers, getting under the skin of the role, is a complete game changer, because we were just putting as many people at the top of the funnel and thinking, okay, it will drop and we will find eventually, the right candidate. We flipped that on its head. What we wanted to do was source and screen people, and the folks that we bring in at the top of the funnel, we're very confident that they are the right candidates. That also helps out with the coordination aspect, because you're not bringing in as many people at the top of the funnel and you've got more bandwidth for our internal team. So that was something that was a big, big challenge for us, especially when you've got large numbers like that, and quarterly targets to hit. And I'd also say the prioritization of things. At that point back in 2022, everything was a business priority, and every hiring manager you would speak to would not kind of downgrade their roles, and rightly so, because they haven't been able to hire for, a year or a year and a half. But again, finishing off quarters and sprints and then, kind of working on the business priorities, we got to that point where we could figure out, okay, what do we actually need to work on now? Where is our emphasis? Where should we put our TA partners to partner on? And I would emphasize that again. If we got told that we were hiring 700 people again the following year, I would definitely try and build that kind of prioritization system. Wow. To really enable us to figure out what we work on and where.
Last question. The last years, there's been a lot of criticism towards, I don't know, blitzscaling and unsustainable growth. In a way, people or companies raising a lot of cash, hiring a lot of people, and week after, or not a week, but next coming months, they usually half the size of the organization. So how do you sort of view that sort of strategy of blitzscaling and also hiring a lot of people? And then do you think that those days are over, or do you think it's going to happen again? It's just a matter of access to capital. What's your take on that?
It's a great question. Yeah, I mean, it's a question a lot of candidates actually ask us, at the TA call, because they've been burned, and they hear that we're hiring X amount of people and think we're doing the same thing. I always kind of say the same thing to the candidates. Like, I genuinely have a lot of trust and belief in our leadership team. They didn't make any layoffs during COVID. They didn't make any layoffs during the downturn, and we're continue hire. So it's testament to them and the finance teams and the business partnering teams around them that we make the right decisions, and we personally will continue doing that, and we want to double down because we know it's right for the company, it's right for our business strategy, and we can do it. It's within our means to do, which is excellent. So that's good for TravelPerk. For the rest of the industry, I think people have really learned the hard way. I think they're looking harder at leadership teams and seeing if they have the pedigree of doing it before. When we look at our leadership teams, most of them have successfully IPO'd a company or been at very stable organizations, and have kind of learned their craft from great places. I think people are looking a little bit harder there, looking at company finances, asking what the business strategy is and how they bring in their revenue. We've had to prepare ourselves for those kind of FAQ type of questions from candidates, and rightly so, and we try and give as much of that information as we can. It's a very interesting question. I'd like to say that we're over that. I think that we're back to sort of sustainable growth. But as we said, back in 2022, it was that kind of war for talent, and everyone was overpaying and breaking rules almost, and kind of doing one stage interview processes and stuff. So it'd be very interesting to see when the capital does come back flowing and revenues are back to the norm, to see if we maintain this hiring bar, and the process-driven recruitment that we see, rather than breaking rules, breaking salary bands, and that kind of desperation for people. TBC, but I hope that it won't go back to those days, and it goes back to kind of sustainable growth, which we see today.
Good closing comment there, Aaron. Thank you so much for spending an hour with me and discussing really, really interesting stuff, and really appreciate your insights and experiences with scaling three massive scale-ups. So thank you so much.
Appreciate it. No, thanks so much.
Thank you for listening. Remember to like and subscribe. We're coming out with a new episode every single month.